I want to welcome my guest, Khalil Jahshan. He's the executive director of the Arab Center in Washington, D.C. Khalil, you've been around so many years. Nobody knows the Middle East better than you. So it's a real
Thank
pleasure to
you.
talk to you in these very tumultuous, confusing, erratic times that we're in. I don't know if I've ever seen a period where so many different things are happening with so much uncertainty. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you, Ray. It's good to be with you. And your depiction of the situation we're witnessing is 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Neither have I. I think it's really a turning point in the history of the Middle East, and the confusion is just unbelievable, particularly on the part of Washington's policies toward the region. Yes.
Yeah, and you are to just give the audience a little information on April 9th, the Arab Center of Washington, D.C., and my guest Khalil Jahshan are going to hold a seminar, I guess, during the day, which will be available to some people online if they can't make it to the event in Washington, D.C. at the National Press Club. The Arab Center is dedicating its 11th annual conference to examining the Trump administration's foreign policy approaches and their implications for democratic norms, international law, and human rights in both the Middle East and the United States. Leading scholars and policy experts will analyze the consequences of Trump's second term foreign policy for the evolving global order, assess how shifting alliances, regional rivalries, and recalibrated U.S. Arab relations are transforming the political landscape, and it'll evaluate the long term impact of Trump's policies toward conflicts from Gaza to Yemen to Iran on U.S. credibility and strategic influence. That is such a very professional and diplomatic way to address the confusion that we are seeing across the world. First, let's just step back. When you look at what's happening in the Middle East, and NATO policy, and the Ukraine Russian war, the war in Iran, the threats against Cuba, the bombings and missile attacks, Israel attacking Lebanon and Iran, the erratic relations between Trump and Israel. What is the world to make of that? What do we make of what's happening?
It is indeed, as you described it, a very chaotic situation, which makes it very difficult to analyze, not just individually, but even for an institution like Arab Center Washington, D.C., a think tank, a research center in its 11th year of existence, totally focused actually on U.S. policy in the Middle East, how we deal with developments in the region, and how we react to these developments in the region. And I'll tell you, this past year, we've had periods of difficulty analyzing in all kinds of previous incarnations dealing with U.S. policy in the region. It's always been kind of turbulent, if you will, not just the region itself, but the policy here in Washington to deal with the region. But this past year has been unique. It has been, as reflected in the title we chose for this annual 11th annual conference. We feel that the foreign policy being pursued right now is upending democracy itself, both here at home and throughout the world community, and particularly in the region. It's also upending diplomacy. There is nothing conventional about the policies that are being pursued by the current administration. It is narcissistic, it's personal whim. It denigrates, if you will, international law, isolates it. No respect for traditional alliances with other countries, except one, the state of Israel. So it seems like we in the United States have subjected our national interest, very diverse national interest, very strategic, very important national interest in this very vital region, to the whim and to the interest of one ally to the detriment of our own reputation, of our own credibility, and of our own interest in this important region.
And it's so complicated, Khalil, when we look at this. We are having overlapping policies, and I'm not even sure we can call them policies. I think actions. These are overlapping actions, right? Because the invasion or the war on Iran, first it was a war, then it wasn't a war, now it is a war. I don't know what the goals are. They said it was regime change. It's that chaotic approach to foreign policy. It's not about whether Iran is a good country or not, or the Ayatollahs have been good. It's about how do we address it. How, when you look at that, I mean, it is digging deeper into the problem. Isn't that the problem? That there is no direction. No strategic plan to what's the goal? Do we even know what the goal
Yeah,
is?
that's a good point, Ray. As I mentioned earlier, this is not the first period in history. I mean, we are a country of what, 250 years old, almost, and we've had extensive relationship with the rest of the world. We've made our mistakes, no doubt about it, but nothing like this. We have never had a chaotic period like this one, particularly in the Middle East, but it cuts across also other regions. And it's not only people in this country keep hiding behind the issue of the Middle East is complex. It has complex problems. It's too complicated. We don't
Right.
know how to deal with it. It's a religious conflict. It is this and that. But that's not what the issue. The issue is how do we handle? We've had one administration after the other for years on a bipartisan basis, Republicans and Democrats alike, follow a certain pattern, conventional pattern of diplomacy, of international law, of respect for human rights, of respect for treaties and relations with other countries to try to deal with these changing and difficult and complex circumstances in the region. So it's not the complexity on the other side that's creating this chaos. It's the chaos on this side that's creating the new complexity, if you will, that we have to deal with at this time. And unfortunately, it's not improving. I mean, every 5 minutes, we hear a statement from an administration official regarding of what you referred to. What's the objective, for example, of
Right.
this major war that we got dragged into by our ally, quote unquote, Israel, on its behalf, and we do not understand why it has happened. And the reason for that lack of understanding is not shortcomings on the part of you and me as American citizens, as much as basically shortcoming on the part of the president, who has not addressed the nation yet. Here we are, 5 weeks into this war, and this is the second war. We've had one back in June, a shorter one, with the same, if you will, rationale or the same reasons, quote unquote. And it doesn't seem to me like the administration itself knows what the reasons
It,
for our involvement in this conflict is. And every 5 minutes, they contradict themselves. You have the president contradicting the vice president, contradicting the secretary of state, contradicting the secretary of defense, contradicting ambassadors in the region, and on and on and on. This is not a policy to start with, as you alluded to earlier. It is kind of a decision unstudied, done at the whim of one person, the President of the United States. And it doesn't seem to be typically, as a person who has been in this town for more than 4 decades observing foreign policy making, usually policies are studied. You have experts, we have
right.
diplomats, we have institutions in this country. They're all right now paralyzed and marginalized.
It seems like President Trump, and I'm trying to not to make it personal about him because he is our president, and but the policies, I think, if I take out his personality, which I think is contributing to all this, I'm still looking at erratic policies. He does have what I would call a whim of steel. This guy just at a moment's notice will say something and it becomes policy. And then within a few hours or a day, it could immediately change. One of the interesting things is that I see is the trampling of the international rule of law. When you target the leader of a country without a prosecution, without an indictment, even just rhetoric, and kill that person. Now, I'm sure some people were celebrating, Khomeini's death, but other people that are a little more long-term looking might look at it and say, isn't that an international war crime? If somebody did that to us, we would be screaming about it. And yet we're doing the exact same thing. We target people, we assassinate them, we murder them, and we don't want to acknowledge that we're killing civilians in the process. And yet we accuse them of killing civilians. What's the legal ramification? It seems like it's been pushed aside and it's irrelevant in all this.
Yeah, with all due respect, I mean, in spite of the fact that the administration has hinted here and there without giving solid proof that this war is justified and then this war is legal according to the norms we are all familiar with, the international legal norms that we're familiar with. I think the opposite is true. We haven't really seen the evidence yet. The main allegation is that Iran is a bad actor. Its leaders are bad. Well, I could give you a list of about 140 out of
Yeah, we don't
195
like them. We don't like
countries
somebody,
around
we
the
blow.
world that are bad
Right.
in my dictionary.
Yeah, we
It
don't like
doesn't
somebody,
mean,
we go blow them up because we don't
yeah.
like them or we disagree with them as
No,
dramatically as we might.
that's the rules, the rule of the jungle. That's not international law. That's not the way to conduct politics, especially as a superpower, particularly as the leader of the democratic world, particularly as a country that for years has arrogated to itself the role to teach other nations how to behave according to international law. So to go and abduct international leaders we disagree with, or kill,
Right,
worse yet, kill, assassinate, that's illegal. And
right,
also to declare war, claiming that it's a defensive war, there is no evidence that there was a threat.
right,
Even the one semi-clear purpose of this war way back, we talked about Iran's potential for developing nuclear weapons. For God's sake, I mean, first of all, the country that's our partner in this war is a nuclear power. So why is Israel
right,
entitled to be a
right,
nuclear power and Iran is not? Number one. Number two, look at the country we just asked to help mediate this conflict, Pakistan. Pakistan is also a nuclear power, and Washington did object to that before. So why all of a sudden that is kosher? Yet Iran's potential, if you will, or research, whether they do have it or not, is still questionable. So the rationale given so far does not make sense. It doesn't is not convincing. And it's not acceptable to even our closest allies. I mean, look what happened to our relationship with NATO. Who's closer to this country than NATO? Nobody.
right,
Uh, it's a tradition that goes back for decades, and yet none of our NATO allies right now is willing to join us in this misadventure. And I call it a misadventure on purpose because that's what it is. Even a country like Spain that has been on good terms with us for centuries, all of a sudden has to close its airspace this week for U.S. armed forces because it doesn't want to contribute to an illegal war. That is not behavior befitting President of the United States or the office of the presidency of the United States.
I remember seeing something very much like this back in the 1960s. It was called the Vietnam War. I
Uh-huh.
served during the Vietnam War, by the
Yes.
way, honorably, and I was discharged. So, people say, oh, I don't see any of these people screaming about war with Iran serving in the military. They're sending troops. But I remember that war started on a lie, the claim that, they wanted to invade Vietnam. So they made the false accusation that the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, the communist Vietnamese, had attacked one of our ships at the Gulf of Tonkin. As it turned out, it took years to find out what the truth was, and it turned out that was a lie. They never attacked us. We initiated the attack. We kind of provoked it, but we used that incident, that claim that they attacked our American vessel in the Gulf of Tonkin for Lyndon Baines Johnson to send 500,000 troops to Vietnam. And we fought that war and lost 65 to 68,000 Americans in that war.
Right.
I'm afraid that we're at that moment where Trump is saying the Gulf of Tonkin is they were going to nuke us in 2 weeks. I heard him say that. And I'm saying they were going to nuke us. They're going to send nuclear weapons. We had to stop them. I'm looking at the same thing. He's already first he said 3,000 troops, first 1,000 troops, now then 5,000. Now they're talking about 50,000 troops that they're going to send.
Yes.
Do you see the parallels there? Can Americans see that, or is it too confusing that their heads are spinning from all the misinformation that's being thrown out there?
Yeah. No, I do share the parallels that you just mentioned because they are based on reality and based on practice, your own experience. But people since that unfortunate war, the Vietnam War, which was also the
We
period
lost
when
that
I
war.
came to the
We
United
lost
States
the war too,
as a
by the way.
student.
We
Yeah,
lost that
yeah,
war,
exactly.
Khalil. I mean,
Not
they think
not
we're going to
only did
win
we
this
lose
war.
it, Ray, but people keep claiming that we've learned the lessons from
Right,
Vietnam. I don't think we have learned the lessons from Vietnam. I mean, Iraq is a case in point. We again started a war based on false assumptions, based
right.
on
Lies.
fabricated facts and lies. Let's call them what they are. And we ended up paying a heavy price, and it cost the American people heavily in the trillions of dollars, in addition to precious lives of American soldiers that had to go and fight in a useless war. And then we have a candidate who basically ran for office, campaigning against that type of war,
Right.
telling us that we shouldn't support, endless wars, meaningless wars, wars that do not pertain to us, and yet does exactly that, and doesn't seem to see it at all, doesn't seem to even acknowledge or respond to some of the criticism. And not only is he, undermining the credibility of the country internationally, but I think he is also upending democracy here at home, because what worries me is the fact that he is showing intolerance, and his administration is showing serious measures of intolerance vis-a-vis all of us who have some reservations about this type of approach and this type of war.
Now, I've covered politics for almost 50 years now,
Yeah.
and there is a description that we use for this type of politics. It's the politics of just throwing everything at the wall and having people focus because we as Americans, I have a job, I have two cars, I got to pay my insurance, I got to work every day, I got to put my kids through school, I got to worry about health insurance. I can't focus on 20 different things. I can't demand, hey, let's resolve this or resolve that. So you do so much that you can get away with other things under the umbrella of this, for example, the Iran war or the kidnapping and abduction of the president of Venezuela, whether he was elected legally or not. There's a process to take him out. We didn't follow that process. what do you think is really happening? In other words, do you sense that this is a veil, that this is a cover for other things that are taking place that we're not, that the public isn't paying attention to?
I think basically, particularly as a person from, with an immigrant background, if you will, I wasn't born in this country. I chose to be part of this country. I love this country like you and others. And I worry when I notice this drifting commitment to, or diminishing commitment to democratic principles in this country. And it's been happening for several decades now. Maybe we thought it was temporary, it was haphazard, it was a passing phase. But it did concern me. Let's say just to show that this is not a partisan remark. The previous administration, I worked very closely with the previous administration and got along well with the chief of staff at the White House, with the Secretary of State, and so on. But to get to the point where they apologize to you and tell you sorry, uh, uh, the quote unquote, the old man is not going to allow for us to do that. We agree with you. That's what we should do. That's what our policy should do, but we can't convince him to do that. Well, for God's sake, the future of this republic is not at the mercy of the will of one person,
Right.
including the President of the United States. He is in a very important position, elected by the American people, but he's not above the law. He's not a dictator. He's not a king. And we just saw millions of people around the country demonstrate. Why do we have in this country, the leading democratic system in the world, have to demonstrate to say that we do not want kings? I mean, we knew we didn't want that 250 years ago, and that's why we established this republic. So to go back, it is a very, very worrisome development to see these cracks in this commitment toward democracy. And I think this administration has turned it into an art form.
Julio, let's take a quick break here on radio, and when we come back, let's continue the conversation. I'm Ray Hanania. I'm interviewing Dr. Khalil Jahshan. This guy's an expert on what's happening in the Middle East. I've known him for so many years with so many great organizations. He's the executive director today of the Arab Center in Washington, D.C. They have a forum coming up on April 9th, which I urge everybody to check out. They can go to your website at arabcenter.org, I believe.
ArabCenterDC.org.
ArabCenterDC.org. I apologize for that.
All right.
ArabCenterDC.org. Go there to get more information on this event that's taking place entitled Trump's Second Term, Upending Democracy, Development, and Diplomacy. That's on April 9th. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion with Dr. Khalil Jahshan, the Executive Director of the Arab Center of Washington, D.C. And welcome back. This is Ray Hanania, and I'm interviewing a phenomenal guest, somebody who really understands the Middle East. He studied it for so many years. I hate to say decades because it makes us both
It is
look
the
old,
case.
because it has been. We don't see a change of faces, unfortunately, in the Arab community. I see the same leaders and the same problems that we've been dealing with. And it's frustrating sometimes, but your experience, I think, especially in these times, help us understand what's happening across this country and across the world. Dr. Jahshan, we were talking about the war in Iran. I wanted to ask you, do you think expectations are driven by these factless statements? I remember we went into Afghanistan and we fought a war there. We ended the war. I personally don't see Afghanistan being very friendly to the United States. What was the purpose of that? We did the same thing as you pointed out in Iraq. We went into Iraq on a lie, weapons of mass destruction, which didn't exist. We did regime change, we changed the country, and it seems like we created an enemy, not a friend. Are we on that? And we did that in Vietnam. Now it's been 50 years since Vietnam, and we finally have okay relations with them, but they're not as significant. Are we headed in that direction with Iran? Everything that we do tells me that we're not going to produce a country that is going to welcome and embrace us the way we think they're going to do it when we bring regime change. What's the real expectation out in your mind out of this war, coming out of this war in Iran?
Ray,
Best and
yeah,
worst case scenario.
I am afraid that we are basically heading in the same directions. Superpowers are like aircraft carriers. They find it very difficult to make a quick U-turn sometimes, and when they do, it's kind of very risky business. And so, unfortunately, with this conflict, unless this administration quickly identifies in a rational way and workable way an exit ramp from this disaster that they have embarked on, I'm afraid we're going to pay a heavy price as a country, similar to the wars that you just mentioned, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam and others. And it would be unfortunate for us to essentially repeat the same mistakes and fail to avoid those same mistakes out of just plain old arrogance, if you will, because there is no other reason, either arrogance or ignorance or both. And I hope that the administration will take a look at an exit ramp quickly. We're told, even today, by the way, the Secretary of State, according to him, I mean, I know he's running around with a broom and a dustpan cleaning after the president, saying that the president would prefer a peaceful solution to this conflict. Well, I hope so. And if he is, why is he threatening to start
Right.
to escalate the war?
Right.
The two do not mix. And it seems to me that this militant diplomacy that keeps using the language of force seems to be undermining whatever little efforts this administration is doing to try to impress upon the other side to enter into serious negotiations with us to end this conflict. But again, I am a strong believer that there is an exit ramp and it could be followed quickly. It could end this conflict quickly. This president is prone to quick solutions, so I hope that he would identify such an exit ramp, listen to some voices of wisdom, which unfortunately he doesn't have a lot of them within the administration, but there might be others in town here in Washington that could hopefully convince him to do so before it's too late for this country.
Yeah, when I look at the Vietnam War, I think is a really good example because we went in there with this racist arrogance. We were going to go in and bomb people that wore sandals. They wore little shirts and they wore straw hats. That's what they told us, and it'll be over, very quickly. And yet the national resistance to us from those people, the way we attacked them, the way we killed them, we used napalm, we killed civilians. It didn't force them into submission. It reinforced their determination to defeat us, and they ended up defeating us. I think out of all the countries that we're fighting with, Iran is probably the toughest, most difficult country to overcome. And I think we underestimate how powerful they really are. Am I wrong about that? Are they a weak country? Or because every conflict where they've been involved, they've stood their ground, even though they've lost leaders. Do you think that
Yeah.
assessment? What do you think of that assessment when we look at Iran?
I think there are parallels there. Of course, the two situations are quite difficult in terms of history, in terms of culture, in terms of how we kind of drifted in the direction of one of those endless and useless wars. However, there are parallels, and one of the parallels, of course, is this attitude that not just us. I mean, anytime a country declares war on another, you try to demonize the enemy. You try
Right.
to downplay their ability to resist. You try to downplay their right to even defend themselves. And this is a case in point here. Again, we are repeating, the same mistake. The Iraqis were wrong. They didn't have the right to defend their country. The Afghanis, the same. And now we're saying the same thing about the Iranians. Yet, at the same time, you get the President of the United States telling the people around him, and it has become public, and he has confirmed it himself, that he basically believes he is stunned at the fact that they haven't surrendered yet. Well, surrendered on your terms because of, because of your own standards of surrender, not their own. So apparently they have a totally different culture and a totally different concept of surrender, of political agreement, of peace. And unless you factor that in, you are not going to find that exit ramp that you need to avoid further escalation in this war and making it much more broad, much more international, and much more dangerous to the world economy.
Let's shift the focus now a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit later also in our, we have about 17 minutes left. Tell us a little bit about what is the impact of these conflicts, Iran in particular, on the Middle East, on the Gulf, on the Middle East, on the Arab world? What impact
Mhm.
do you see taking place?
I think essentially people in the Middle East are in a state of shock. Number one, one weakness we have in terms of our own foreign policy making, by the way, which predates Trump, it has nothing to do with Trump personally,
Right,
is the inability to distinguish between public policy and public opinion. Because we despise other publics, like you mentioned in your previous questions,
right,
somehow we feel that these other cultures don't have public opinion. They do have a public opinion. We do that work. We measure that public opinion. Actually, the last public opinion survey we did last year in the region, we did 14 different Arab countries, 44,000 people interviewed, and we asked them, what's the country that's most threatening to you? Hey, number one, Israel. Number two, the United States. Number three, Iran. And now we're trying to tell them, no, 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 no. Iran is your number one enemy, and you need to fight it. Now, we have been maybe successful in convincing one Arab ruler or one Arab government or two or three or four to confuse them with who is the enemy. But the public is not fooled by this, and that's where we need to go back and readjust our policy basis on the fact that these people know exactly what's happening. They have not been swayed by our shallow depiction of the rationale for this war or the reasoning for it, and that's why they are not supportive of it. What's going to be the end result? Even more antagonistic public opinion after this war is over, because already you can hear right now it might be whispering here and there, but eventually these voices are going to get louder and louder. And frankly, the region is being damaged. Uh, Basic things like Ray. I mean, you and I don't think about it when we say, well, they were forced to shut down the oil production, and as if like you can turn the faucet on in 5 minutes when
right.
it's over. You can't. It's going to take maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years to resume the production of liquefied gas and oil, petroleum production and petrochemicals. So when you and I are paying right now, what, a little bit more than $1 a gallon more at the pump, if this continues, we're going to be paying maybe two, maybe $3 more. For what? For a mistake to
Right.
be somehow dragged by the nose by another foreign country for its own rationale, for its own reasons into this war by a president who promised us not to
No
fall into
war.
this trap. That's why it's so sad.
Do you believe that Israel has had a undue, enormous influence over the Trump administration? Because clearly, all these things that are taking place, and I mentioned there are other wars besides Ukraine. There's the Lebanon war taking place with Israel. There's the Gaza war. It's still continuing. It hasn't ended. And it seems like these are things that Israel wants. We end up funding Israel. We end up supporting Israel. It's like Israel is using us. Are they using us? Are they more diplomatically strategic when they look at Trump and say, oh, this guy's going to be easy to manipulate? Let's do what we need to do. Let's take advantage of all the extreme things we've always ever wanted to talk about. Take out Iran, take out Gaza, take out southern Lebanon, and get away with it with a president who may not even understand the consequences of this. Is Israel's involvement that heavy, or is that just part of the conflict from so many years between Arabs and Israelis? We just assume that.
No, you better believe it. It is that heavy, and I know there might be some listeners who might say, "Uh-oh, Ray and Khalil are anti-Semitic. They don't like Jews." It has nothing to do with Jews. Disagreeing with the policies of a state like
Right.
the state of Israel has nothing to do with your or mine approach to or attitude toward people of the Jewish faith, whom we respect. But when you have a state that claims to speak on behalf of all and follows wrong policies, we have the right to basically criticize this policy. Yes, because of all
Absolutely.
kinds of reasons, domestic and foreign, political and financial. Israel has had, I would say, excessive influence on the decision making process in this country, both domestic and foreign policy. I do not question the right of Israel and its supporters to try to influence decision making in a democratic country. They have the right to do so. But they have to remember that in the final analysis, foreign policy of any country, particularly a superpower, is done in the interest of the aggregate, in the interest of the people, not in the interest of a few that have more money than others or more influence than others. So I think in this case, definitely in this administration, voluntarily, even though there are pockets of resistance, we have seen lately people close to the president who campaigned for him are either quitting their jobs or basically being more critical vocally of the policies of this administration for positions. I might disagree with them politically, but on this particular issue, I agree with them. This administration has been a pushover when it comes to Israel because of the message from the top. I think the president has been too trusting. On the one hand, he doesn't even trust his own mother or father or his own kids. Yet on the other one, somehow anything Bibi says, is okay for him. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense at all. And that's why we are getting deeper and deeper in mistakes in the Middle East and hurting our own national interest in this vital region.
And of course, as you point out, we're talking about Israeli government policy, not the Israeli people. And when people accuse me or others of being anti-Semitic, it's because they don't want to address the facts. They want
Correct.
to attack people personally to distract. They turn to that. And I think, though, that we've seen over this past year, and I don't know if you agree with this, we've seen a shift against Israel's government here in the United States. More Americans, according to recent polls, are upset with what Israel's government is doing. In the election in Illinois, APAC lost many of the races that they funded through multiple They even created side packs to get money so they could do stuff. In one race, there was an Arab and a Muslim running, and the Arab was getting close in the ninth congressional district, Kat Abu Ghazala, and APAC thought, oh my gosh, she could win despite all our efforts. Let's fund, I think her name was Bushra Amawala, who was also
Yes.
running in the race. Without Bushra's approval, they just started promoting Bushra to level down the pro Arab vote so that Kat Abu Ghazala would lose, and she came in third place in what traditionally has been a Jewish district, although in reality it's mostly a Muslim and non-Jewish district these days. It's not the same as it was
Yes.
under the past years. So there has been a change. Is it significant enough to eventually bring
Yes.
change to
There
Israel's
has been a
government?
change. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
There
is
has
it
been
is
a significant change. Yeah.
to change Israel's
And
government
that
to
change
force
will be
change there?
even more significant in the future. The problem with it is it's recent and it takes time,
Got it.
frankly, for these changes to filter down, particularly to filter down to the level of policy. So when you're talking about change at the public opinion level, it doesn't automatically translate into change in policy,
Right.
particularly in a democracy, frankly, because there is an element of chaos inherent in the system that doesn't allow it to filter up as quickly as possible. But when you look at the Democratic Party today, and the Democratic Party traditionally in this country has been very, very basically supportive of Israeli policies, of pro-Israel policies, and kind of accepting of Israeli propaganda. And all of a sudden, with this crisis, particularly the war in Gaza, and after they have seen the genocidal approach and policies of the current government in Israel vis-a-vis the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, people have changed their mind. And the interesting part is the most pronounced aspect of that change is not only among younger Democrats or younger members of the Democratic Party, but among Jewish younger Democrats in this country. So the change is significant. It is acknowledged by Israeli leaders. They are petrified to see that change, and that's why they resort to the extreme right to try to compensate for that. And all of a sudden, they are beginning now to hear criticism from the from the extreme right against the same policies. So they are definitely turning confused and paranoid about what's happening, but they have no one to blame except themselves. It is their policies. It is their policies, stupid, that is causing this change. It is not hatred for Semites or hatred for Jews or hatred for anybody, as much as basically it's dislike of specific policies being followed by a state.
You touched on a great catchphrase that from 20 years ago it was the economy stupid, and now it's
Yep,
the policy stupid. People need to wake up. Khalil, let's talk a little bit about your conference that's coming up on April 9th. Can
sure.
you talk? Because and for our listeners, Dr. Khalil Jahshan, with is executive director of the Arab Center of Washington, D.C., is kind of giving us a little background insight for this conference. You have a number of other experts that are going to join you. Can you tell us about this conference on April 9th that'll be taking place at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., sponsored by the Arab Center, arabcenterdc.org. And there are too many things to remember sometimes. I apologize for that.
Yeah,
And it will be people can log in and register and view it online if they're not in Washington D.C. Tell us a little bit about this conference coming
sure.
up
I'll be
because it'll
delighted to do
expand
that.
on everything we've talked about.
Yeah, essentially, what we're trying to do is to assess U.S. foreign policy and its implications at this basically stage of the second term of President Trump and prior to the midterm elections that are coming up. How are these issues going to impact that? The title, as you said, of the conference is Trump's second term, Upending Democracy, Development and Diplomacy. And it's going to be typical of all these kind of both academic and political events. It's going to be divided into a keynote speaker. And this one will have both two panels, if you will, dividing the subject matter into two subtopics, in addition to a luncheon in the middle of the day. So it's a one-day conference that starts at 9 a.m. and ends at around 3 a.m. Those who would like to attend in person can register for that if you are in the Washington, D.C. area. Others, you can join us online. People do join us from across the world for these types of conferences, and we do hundreds of them a year, essentially. But this one is larger than usual because it's our annual conference. You would be happy to know, Ray, that our keynote speaker this year is from your neck of the woods, and that's Professor John Mersheimer from the
Well,
University of Chicago, a
phenomenal guy,
world-renowned
very smart.
scholar.
Yep.
Yeah, and he will be talking about, he's the author of How States Think, the Rationality of Foreign Policy, at a time when there is nothing rational about our
That's
foreign policy. So
there
he
is.
is a key expert on that, and we would love, I'll be honored to introduce him, and we'll be honored to listen to his advice. The first panel in the morning will be U.S. policies in the MENA region, the Middle East and North Africa, under Trump, alignments, rivalries, reshuffling regional orders, as you and I have discussed. And there will be scholars from both throughout the United States and throughout the Middle East, including universities well known like George Washington University, Georgetown University, the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft here in Washington, Zeteo, and others. The afternoon panel will be focused on what's next, Trump's legacy, U.S. foreign policy, and upcoming elections, again, with 4 or 5 scholars and experts, activists, including Professor Sahar Aziz, Carrie Dan, Charles Dunn, retired diplomat, James Zogby, Rana Natour, legal expert, human rights from the Middle East. And then in between, there will be a special lunch to honor our own scholar, Noura Arikat, who has spent the bulk of her career teaching law, criminal justice right now at Rutgers University, and she will be honored for her contribution to the state of the art.
All right. My guest, Khalil Jahshan, the executive director of the Arab Center of Washington, D.C. ArabCenterDC.org is the website. The panel, 2 panels that are going to be taking place to address Trump's second term, upending democracy, development, and diplomacy, will take place on April 9th. So go to their website at ArabCenterDC.org to get more information. One of the good things about you, Khalil, is you understand the importance of communications and conveying information to the public. Not everybody in our world understands the importance of the media and communications and engaging it. You're one of the few, and I think that is reflected in the successes that you've had over the years. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate your help with this, and it's good to see you. I enjoyed this interview, and thanks again for your interest in our activities at Arab Center, Washington, D.C.
All right. Thank you, everybody.